So why do people mispredict their reactions to tragedies like this one? A mental image captures one moment of a single event, but one's happiness a year after the event is influenced by much more than the event itself. A lot happens in a year. There are birthday parties, school plays, promotions, lovemaking, dental appointments, hot fudge sundaes, and so on. These things aren't nearly as important as the tragedy, of course, but they are real. There are a lot of them, and together they have an impact that forecasters tend not to consider. When we're trying to predict how happy we will be in a future that contains event X, we tend to focus on event X and forget about all the other events that also populate that future, events that tend to dilute the hedonic impact of event X. In a sense, we are slaves to the focus of our own attention. For example, in one study we asked college students to predict how happy or unhappy they would be a few days after their home team won or lost a football game, and they expected the game to have a large impact on their hedonic state. But when we simply asked them to name a dozen other things that would happen in those days before they made their predictions, the game had far less impact on their predictions. In other words, once they thought about how well populated the future was, they realized that the game was just one of many sources of happiness, and that its impact would be diluted by others. When you study errors such as these, it is only natural to wonder how they might be avoided. And people are always asking me if I would like to develop programs to improve people's effective forecasting accuracy. Before we rush out to develop such programs, we should ask whether the impact bias is something we want to live without. Errors in human judgment are logical violations. If you say you'll feel 7 on a 1 to 10 scale, and you actually end up feeling 5, then you've made a mistake. But is that mistake a bad thing? The fact is that errors can have adaptive value. For example, perhaps it is important for organisms to believe they would be thoroughly devastated by the loss of their offspring, and the fact that this isn't actually true is beside the point. What may matter is that the organism thinks it is true and acts accordingly. Perhaps the best way to think of an error in judgment is like a mosquito in an ecosystem. You see the darn pest, and your first inclination is to ask, how do we get rid of these? So you spray DDT and you kill all the mosquitoes, and then you find out that the mosquitoes were at the bottom of a food chain, and the fish ate the mosquitoes, and the frogs ate the fish, and the bears ate the frogs, and now the entire ecology is devastated. Similarly, errors in human judgment may be playing important roles that scientists don't see.